Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about what our global power shifts at this time when we look at Vladimir Putin's visit of India and what does it signify in terms of a deepening Moscow-New Delhi alignment, and of course raising questions about how militarizing India may leverage a weakened Russia to assert regional dominance. On the other hand, we'll be talking about Pakistan students facing mounting barriers abroad when we look at UK universities tightening visa scrutiny amid rising refusal rates and regulatory pressure. All of these important developments and how they will shape tomorrow for us. I have with me today Aizaz Chaudhry, who's a former Foreign Secretary and also Ambassador. Thank you for being with us. We will also have with us Lt.Gen retired Raza Ahmad, who's a defense analyst. Thank you for joining us today. Aizaz, when we look at this development as far as Russia and of course India is concerned, how are you looking at this in the light of what this may mean for the region as far as South Asia is concerned?
Thank you very much. Russia is trying to signal to the rest of the world that it is not diplomatically isolated. Although it is facing that pressure from Europe, from America, because of not agreeing to end the war in Ukraine. But we also see it as Russia's interest to sell more defense equipment to India. It is also concerned that India, under America's pressure, might reduce buying of the Russian oil that India has been purchasing for the last few years. So these are some of the items on the agenda. Of course, from India's perspective, it is walking on a very tight rope. Because on the one hand, it wants to have stronger relationship with the US, but it also wants to maintain ties with Russia and with China. So that is placing it in a very, very tight spot. And let's see how it goes. As far as South Asia is concerned, we are not alarmed in Pakistan because India and Russia have always been partners. It is nothing new. Even today, 60% of Russia's defense arsenal is actually Russian origin, is of Russian origin. Yes, India is trying to diversify it, but the Russians are trying to sell them more as I think it's a Soviet plane. I don't remember exactly the name. And also the S-400 missiles, which form the anti-ballistic missile system for India. Let's see if India is able to cough out that kind of money to buy those, because it is also under pressure from the American side to buy equipment from them. Yes, it is a country with bigger pockets, but it is now increasingly facing a tremendous pressure on how to maintain that balance between its relations with Russia and its relations with United States. Pakistan, of course, already has its own alignments. Even with Russia, Pakistan's relations are no longer cold, but actually have warmed up. With China, Pakistan maintains.
So when we look at, on that point, when we look at what's happening between India and Pakistan, do you think Moscow can play a role in the kind of tensions that, of course, we know exist between us and India?
I'm not too sure. One, because Indians are reluctant to accept the third party role. Although at times there is a contradiction because they do accept, for example, in May 2025, it was India which had requested the US for ceasefire. And earlier also, even the Soviet times, you would remember the 1965 war, ceasefire was brokered by the Soviets and Tashkent Agreement took place in the former Soviet Union. So Indians are struggling to find whether they should accept third party mediation or third party role or not. And there's a sort of contradiction because on the one hand they don't want a third party role, but they also don't have a bilateral contact with Pakistan. So they are in a quandary. On balance, I don't see Russia playing much role in mediating between India and Pakistan.
Okay, but also, you know, when we look at India leveraging Russia's diplomatic isolation for its own regional ambitions, do you think that's also a possibility for India at this time?
You know, India's regional ambitions have already received a huge setback uh, in the May 2025 confrontation between the two countries, because the West as a whole and rest of the world too thought that India was strong enough to take on China, to counterbalance China, let alone Pakistan. And if they can't manage Pakistan and had to suffer a defeat, then what kind of regional role that they were aspiring will they be able to play? So I think their regional ambitions have already received a setback. And in fact, you would recall that even with BRICS and SCO, their participation is not considered to be, very active because the Russians and Chinese think that perhaps India is more interested towards United States. So I think India at this time is suffering some kind of diplomatic isolation. So Russian visit will, of course, help it to curtail that, but I don't think it will bolster its regional ambitions anymore.
Aizaz, please stay with me. I'm going to go to Lt.Gen and Raza, and then I'll come back to you. Gen Sab, you know what Aizaz is saying is, of course, that, you know, India has, in some sense, is going through diplomatic isolation, but in a sense, so is Russia, right? So their diplomatic reach together, you know, do you think that it's going to be able to perhaps tackle that kind of isolation?
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think I'll first like to mention, you know, the focus of the present India-Russia talks that are going on today and probably tomorrow. You know, they have identified 5 or 6 areas very clearly. And I think the most important one is the desire of India to sign an FTA or a free trade agreement with the Eurasian Economic Union, which is actually some kind of competitor to China's BRI. And I think the purpose for that is to possibly, bypass some of the trade, prohibited trade, as it is called by the US and the EU, the Indian and the Russian trade in the energy sector. And today there are 5 members of the Eurasian Economic Union, and they are Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Russia. Of course, Russia is the guiding country in that, and the headquarters is located in Moscow itself. So India is eyeing that, and they're talking of trade worth $100 billion in the next by 2030, and probably before that. There also Russia is trying, to sell them another nuclear power plant to be built inside India, and probably I think they've already agreed the site for that. Russia is again trying its best to sell the Su-57 to India, and they've even offered that they could indigenously produce that in India, which is definitely going to affect, the regional balance, and it should be a matter of concern for us. Considering, the failure of Tejas which was seen by the whole world, and the unfortunate, loss of the Indian pilot there. I think India also knows that they cannot have, multiple kind of aircraft in their inventory, which is actually very problematic. And they have purchases from France, they have purchases from the US, or they're in the pipeline. They already have, purchases, large purchases from Russia, but they're all very old vintage, and they're being called flying coffins. The Tejas is being dubbed, as widow makers. So I think India will be relying heavily on Russia once again, which will disturb, the balance of power in the region. They're also talking of continuous energy cooperation with each other. That will actually
Back to you.
be.
General Saab, on that note, I want to explore the military angle a little bit and then I'll come back to you. Aizaz Saab, do you think it's when we look at what General Saab is saying, of course he's raising some very pertinent points. This is no longer a world of blocks, it seems. But do you think that goes for India, a state like India also? Because of course we look at a Pakistan that is at this time, balancing relationships all round. If we look at China, we look at USA, we look at our borders across when we look at Bangladesh, all over at this time. Do you see this as that kind of an outreach? And secondly, do you think that military outreach that we see is going to be a cause of concern for us, or should be?
Yeah, in the age of major power competition, it is natural that for every country, there would be some balancing act it would have to play. And for India being a bigger economy, the balancing act is also more difficult. To give you an example, Janasa was saying that they are thinking of topping $100 billion of trade. On the one hand, India is under pressure to reduce the oil purchases from Russia and is also trying to increase gas imports from the United States. So I honestly don't see that happening. I think the balance of trade will sort of overall volume of trade will come down. For your second point, of course, it is a matter of concern if India continues to feverishly militarize itself. Uh, but I also feel that if they continue to have so many platforms, they have Rafales, they have Tejas, and now they are trying to have Russian fighter planes, stealth fighters. I don't know how will they, coordinate or integrate all these different diverse platforms. But let them do whatever they want. If they continue to militarize, of course, that is a matter of concern for Pakistan. But I believe Pakistan's military leadership is already preparing itself for any further aggression from India because India has still, not ended Operation Sindoor. They say it is on pause, and we keep hearing hostile rhetoric from Indian leaders. We hear also the chatter whether they want to come from the south this time. Whatever be the reason, I think Pakistan is prepared. Pakistan should be prepared. We should not be complacent. Should India commit another round of aggression, one, Pakistan will defend itself and will defeat it like we did in May. But more importantly, international community will not be with India again. Last time also, India's bluff on Pakistan using the terrorism card to aggress against Pakistan did not work. And this time around, also, if they try to aggress against Pakistan, this this bluff of terrorism will not work. And therefore, I don't think I am that concerned by Russian sale of military equipment to India. But yes, it is a matter of concern. Yes, we should continue to be prepared because Indian aggressive designs have not ended as yet.
Right. Jalsa, do you think that, the kind of acquisitions that we've seen as far as India is concerned, like S-400S and Su-57S, risk triggering an arms race in South Asia? Do you think it's a possibility?
That arms race is already going on, and it is actually compelling Pakistan, which has a smaller economy, to get into the arms race. But we are not falling in that trap. We have a different strategy at our national security level, and we that was demonstrated to India as well as the whole world, and they understand that. But I think what is of also greater concern is the continuous use of terrorism, state-sponsored terrorism by India against Pakistan, and that now includes digital terrorism as well, as was pointed out by the DGISPR today. There are multiple social media platforms abroad which are supported by Indian agencies to draw a wedge between the armed forces of Pakistan and the people of Pakistan. They are being used, to discredit the government, even the judiciary, and I think that is also a matter of great concern for us, because India understands that militarily they can never defeat Pakistan, and therefore they are using terrorism and digital terrorism against us. We are aware, that so many, ex handlers or political handlers are being managed from India and other enemies of Pakistan. And I think it needs to be uh, tackled on an urgent basis at the political, military, and at the legal levels. We have our laws against violation of these kinds of laws and regulations, and all those laws must be judiciously used. And I think in addition to that, the mainstream media needs to understand that if social media is being systematically used against the national security interests of Pakistan, then the mainstream media could actually try to balance that out with the help of our judiciary and with the help of our academia, and also with the help of the civil society of Pakistan.
Right, fair enough. Let me go to Aizaz. Aizaz, when we talk about this kind of digital terrorism that we know is being used on the international front also, do you think that one, of course, there is this nexus we talk about with regard to Russia and India, and but this is also a huge problem in the world at this time. Do you think it's something that is being kept an eye on? Because of course, I also want to discuss this, that this is something DGISPR pointed out very pertinently today, and it is something that Pakistan continues to face. This war of narratives, this misleading, fake narrative that we also saw India putting forward post Pahalgam. Do you think the world is sufficiently concerned about it?
I think so. You would recall that European Union had an NGO called EU Disinfo Lab, and it carried out a research and discovered that for more than 15 years, Indian state have been sponsoring fake NGOs, hundreds of fake websites and accounts, even accounts of dead professors, to malign Pakistan. And this was a massive research. In fact, we haven't really publicized it as much as perhaps we need to, because it's not something that India is doing now. What I'm trying to say is that for a decade and a half, India has been using fake NGOs and social media to malign Pakistan. And I think that is continuing even now. And sometimes they also use the detractors of Pakistan. Suppose there is a frustrated, disgruntled person from within the country, and says something, India tends to use that. So our citizens will have to be very careful not to fall prey, not to fall victim to India's massive social media campaign against Pakistan. At the end of the day, all of us are secure only when Pakistan is secure. And we rest in great assurance that Pakistan cannot be defeated by the Indians. But hybrid war is a reality. This war through proxies against Pakistan. It was rightly pointed out by the general. TTP and BLA have been receiving. Even my recent book on Pakistan-India relations gives evidence on how India was providing money to BLS activists, even when the peace process was going on. So this is something of a grave concern. And you would also recall that India has been carrying out target assassinations in Pakistan, up to 20. The Guardian story, which it wrote after consulting the intelligence operatives from both Pakistan and India, retired ones. It said that as many as 20 target assassinations have been carried out inside Pakistan by India's state operatives. So these are the hallmarks of a rogue state. But we need to really point it out to the rest of the world, so that the world comes to know the real face of India. I think already it is happening, but more needs to be done, as you rightly mentioned, in terms of narratives. I think we need to not only counter India's false narratives, but also build a narrative about Pakistan being a factor of peace and stability in this region. Thank you.
We talk about peace, and of course, we want peace and stability, and also, of course, effective deterrence. At this time, with a neighbor like India, we're talking about proxy wars, and I think I'm going to go to General Saab with this. General Saab, when we look at these kind of proxy wars that are being fought, we are also looking at, of course, interference. When we look at the eastern borders, we know what's coming through. When we look at Afghanistan also. So overall, in your opinion, when we talk about credible deterrence, so that we can prevent any kind of escalation, how do you look at, do you see any other steps that Pakistan needs to take at this time to ensure that, we have that sufficient credible deterrence?
Well, I think our deterrence, both at the conventional as well as at the nuclear level, is very credible, and it is based on the minimum credible deterrence formula. But it's also known to the whole world as well as India that it has got all components of deterrence available, ready, and present, and that will be used continuously. And of course, if deterrence fails, then we have the ability of defending ourselves effectively, as we did in May. I'd like to, also make a mention that as a consequence of the 27th Amendment, the creation of the post of the Chief of Defense Forces, I think, is the major step in enhancing the national security apparatus of Pakistan. I think most of the uh, big countries of the world, even some smaller countries of the world, they have a chief of defense forces with them, who is the overall commander of all the military services, whether it's the Army, Navy, Air Force, the intelligence services, the Strategic Plans Division. So I think that will also go a long way in strengthening our defense abilities, both at the strategic level, at the tactical level, at the operational level, and also at the level of deterrence capabilities that I talked about earlier. Very quickly, I'd like to once again make a
Let me
mention.
come back to you. Ji, General Sahab, let me come back to you. Aizaz Sahab, I know that you're short of time, but when we look at Pakistan, do you think that we need to recalibrate our diplomatic approach at all in response to India's outreach at this time with regard to Russia, their alignment? Of course, we know that, in terms of, I have to say this, that when we look at our diplomatic efforts more recently in the last couple of years, we know that, we've been able to make a lot of headway. We also look at being, like I said, there's a lot of balancing, which extends from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, USA, China, Bangladesh. So we are, balancing our relationships with states all over the world. But do you think there is need of any recalibration at all?
I surely do. I think we should reach out to Russia even more vigorously as we have been doing this so in the past. And there are already common grounds for Pakistan and Russia to coordinate. Remember, there is a Moscow format on Afghanistan for which Pakistan and Russia and China and Iran coordinate very, very closely because a very potent threat has emerged from Afghanistan. Remember, Afghanistan is now being ruled by a Taliban regime, and the Indians hated the Taliban, but out of enmity for Pakistan, they have embraced them. So this India Afghan Taliban nexus uh, will actually promote terrorism in the region. And that's a common point of concern for Pakistan, for China, for Russia, and for Iran also. So I think there is a need to revamp our diplomatic effort to expose this new nexus that India has formed with the Taliban, and Russians are very sensitive to this, and I'm sure they will also buy this. But Russians, uh, as it is, for the last, I think, decade or so, Russians have been showing their interest in investing in a north-south pipeline. Somehow they have always nominated a firm which was under US sanctions. And our plea was that if you can nominate a firm which is free from sanctions so that we can work together. But perhaps there is a little more time once the war in Ukraine ends. I think our relationship with Russia will probably gain further strength.
Right. Thank you so much, Aizaz Sahab. Thank you for your very valuable input. Thank you for joining us today. Jen Sahab, when we look at, you heard what Aizaz Sahab is saying, when we look at this kind of recalibration, like you said, of course, our relationship with Russia is, the overtures they've been making. At this time, when you look at the global spectrum, how do you assess, Pakistan's deterrence policy and our overall, outreach towards nations, global powers also?
Well, I think the present national security policy of Pakistan takes cognizance of both the regional as well as the international environment. And I think it is actually a continuous process, and I think it is happening. It is in very good hands, and I think the whole world has seen it. As I've said repeatedly, I think in the last 1 or 2 years, and I think many of the world powers themselves, they have been praising it publicly, openly, when compared, to whatever India is doing. And I think we need to continue in that direction. Of course, it is very important for us to adopt, a regional approach to facing all threats that are emanating, whether they're from India, Afghanistan, or elsewhere. And I think the most important thing in that would be the internal security and stability of Pakistan, and for that the motto given to the nation by the Qaid of unity, faith, and discipline. Once that is followed, I think we need not, fear anyone. And I'm sure, Pakistan will survive despite all the challenges that it faces. And we are quite capable of defending ourselves and our deterrence. Once again, I would say, whether it is nuclear or conventional, and our national security policy is one of the best in the world.
But of course, I agree, and of course, it's hard to disagree with that, Jansa. But do you think that when we look at Modi's, pursuit of a superpower military, as he likes to claim, when we look at this outreach also, do you think it's also aimed in, of course, they've suffered the recent defeat when we look at Pahalgam. They also seem to be diminished in size diplomatically when we look at, on the global stage. Do you think it's aimed at restoring that? It's also aimed at perhaps, trying to intimidate, countries like, for example, us, who we've defeated. We've defeated them in Pahalgam. We've defeated them in their falsified narrative also. Do you think they're trying to, of course, sort of pressurize us?
Yeah, they're continuously doing that. And I think it is now one of their declared policy by saying that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. They said that, once there was some very serious terrorist attacks against Pakistan from Afghanistan, and even the Indian media was eulogizing the TPP and the BLA and all other terrorists for hurting Pakistan. So I think that is known to us and to everyone else. With that, I think President Putin praised India, today on two accounts. And he said that India is technologically sovereign. I'm quoting him now. I would tend to disagree with that because what we have seen very recently, it disproves that the Indian indigenous capabilities, whether it is tanks, whether it is satellites, UAVs, or aircrafts, is the story of a disaster, of continuous delays. And, even their own armed forces are not prepared to use the indigenously produced equipment by India. The second statement which he made was that the Indian economy is one of the fastest growing in the world. I tend to disagree with that also, because you must have heard, that when President Trump and
Right. Jansa, you're right. When we look at India and its diminishing profile globally and its efforts, targeting and trying to reach out to Russia or states like that to sort of bolster its own image, they don't seem to be working. And of course, Pakistan, when we look at our policy, it's always been based on mutual interests. It's always been based on mutual respect with other nations. Whether we look at China, whether we look at USA, whether we look at Saudi Arabia. So, overall, there's, of course, a stark change in policy when we look at a state like India and Pakistan. Moving on, we also want to, of course, speak about what's happening with regard to UK immigration, the crackdown and its impact on Pakistani students. We'll be talking about how, whether Pakistan, classifying Pakistan as a high-risk country and what specific compliance pressures are driving these decisions, and what kind of way forward do we see for us when we look at diplomacy, when we look at our diplomatic efforts also with regard to our relationship with UK and the visa refusals, when we look at Pakistan and what the students at this time are facing. We'll have guests with us. We'll have with us Wajid Minhas, who's Regional Director, University of Gloucestershire. Ji, Wajid Sab, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Wajid Sab, when we look at what's happening with regard to UK universities now classifying Pakistan as a high-risk country, How do you look at this? And you know, when we look at what specific compliance pressures do you think are driving these decisions?
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, first of all, for having me. Uh, I think UK is going through a big change right now. If we look at the background, UK is the country hosting international students over the last 1,000 years. Uh, Last year alone, we had more than 700,000 students who came to UK. So traditionally, UK has always been very welcoming to international students, and we are second largest host after USA for international students. So international student is part of our academia's DNA. We are totally aware of the enormous benefit or contribution we get from international students in terms of enriching our academic experience at our university campuses, bringing more diversity to our classrooms, and bringing more creativity to this industry, as well as contributing more than 80 billion economic contribution towards UK economy. So we are always welcoming. So, but right now, I think because of recent challenges we face from few particular markets, including Pakistan, I think we have come to the point where I think we are thinking to review the whole uh, paradigm of this international student industry. So what right now is happening, the UK government has pressure on net migration figures. So the UK government on one side want to reduce the migration figures. On the other side, UK universities really want still recruit students from these markets, including Pakistan. But last year, more than 12,000 Pakistani students, they applied for asylum. And I think because of few erroneous practices, if you like, by few within this sector, I think it has given it to a kind of a murky shape, which we really need to reshape now in future. So because of these pressures and because of indigenous demographics changes within the UK, I think we are at a point where the government as well as the stakeholders are reviewing the whole situation. So there are new things in place now, which I'm happy to talk about since we go further.
Gee, please. And what do you think those alternatives are? What do you think those measures are that are going to be fruitful for students?
I think every student should be aware of the Home Office, which is the main department who deals with the UK visa and immigration stuff. And if anybody would like to read more about it, you can always go to UKVI website, Home Office website. So BCA metrics are the talk of the town right now. So BCA is basically basic compliance assessment metrics. So that means the UK government is putting new measures in place for UK universities to ensure that we only recruit quality students. So what are these measures? Everybody who is, any university who is recruiting students from Pakistan, they have to make sure that the student retention rate is more than 95%. That means anybody who is coming on student visa, they should stay within that university, they should complete their degree, they should not apply for asylum, they should not apply for work permit or any other categories. So the retention rate pressure is one thing. Number two is the attendance. The student has to maintain more than 95% attendance, and the passing rate within the classroom should also be more than 95%. So things like that has been put in place, number one. Number two is that if the visa refusal rate goes beyond 5% from any single country, then we may lose our license. License is the kind of a UKVI licensing I'm talking. This is where we have right to recruit students from different markets, including Pakistan. So if the visa refusal rate go beyond 5%, then that's a big risk for us. So right now, the visa refusal rate from Pakistan is more than 18%. So I think the threshold for visa refusal is very high from Pakistan, and we have to bring it down to 5%. So that simply means that we have to put in place more rigorous measures and steps to make sure that we are only recruiting genuine students. Having said that, it doesn't mean that the genuine students cannot come.
What practical advice or alternative pathways would you suggest to students who are going to apply now?
I would say that students are still welcome. All genuine students, they should be very confident when they apply for UK visa. All they need to do is to make sure they apply to genuine universities and the courses they really want to study, not a course which is being told by somebody. So first of all, I would say they should apply direct to UK universities because we
proper
have
research. So you're saying proper research and proper application measures, perhaps more stricter ones, can sort of, insulate them against rejection?
Definitely. I think there is a kind of pre-application homework which Pakistani students tend not to do. So I would encourage them to do that, do some research, desk research, talk to universities. We have international admissions team, we have immigration teams. You can always talk to us, you can email us, you can telephone us. So we will always talk to you what could be the best option for you. So choose a right course for you, not with the desperation of visa. So don't need to worry about the visa in the first place. You need to worry more about choosing a right university and right course for you. Number two, I would say if you go to a local agent, recruitment agency, make sure that you go to credible agencies which are being accredited by the British Council, by AQF, the Agent Quality Frameworks. That's a new code of conduct introduced by the UK university sector. So make sure that any agent you choose, they comply with AQF regulations and they are trained by the British Council. These two things. And then obviously you can always check on the university website if that particular agent is directly working with that university or not. Because there are many, as I said, erroneous practices are happening on agents' part. So be careful when you use agents. You can still go to them, but make sure that you go to credible and good quality agents so that they guide you on a right direction. And then course selection is very critical. Everybody from Pakistan is...
Mr. Minhas, but I'm going to interject. When we look at Pakistan as a country with the literacy and education, and of course a third world country with limited resources, a student applying, it's going to make it more difficult, right? It's going to make it more difficult for them to be able to, of course, make sure that they have those checks in place that you're talking about, they have those measures in place, they do that extensive research. So it means, it's going to make things more difficult, at least for a while, right?
I think I would agree on that, Mahrukh, to a certain extent. I can totally understand we are talking about a different market here. The students are not very well aware. They don't have that culture actually to do all these things. Maybe they're more of a dependent nature students. So normally they like somebody to support them. But still, I feel we have seen a big change everywhere. After this COVID, for example, there is more virtual things happening. The internet is there, technology is there. Now AI coming into play. So they still have opportunity to do some little bit research, homework, and make sure that they're going to right university and the right course. And then the UK visa regulation, they also need to understand sometimes. They need to provide right documents, right bank statement and everything, whatever is being required by the UK Embassy or the UK VI. Sometimes proper documentation, timely application for visa, and choosing a right course and university can help a lot.
Right, fair enough. Do you think that, is this okay, and first, do you see this as a short, this thing to, this spate of rejections, or like you said, for us, our efforts to bring this down as a short-term measure and before things sort of get back to normal to what we've seen before? And, we know as past students who've of course, studied in the UK, we know that of course how easier the process was and the restrictions were not as stringent. Do you see this going back to that?
I think, Mahrukh, I would say it's like a medium-term kind of challenge we will have, because if you look at the scale of damage, that is quite big. So a couple of days ago, the Dawn News also reported 10 UK universities have kind of halted their recruitment from Pakistan. So first of all, students need to be aware of these sort of institutions, which are even high risk for them. The visa refusal rate for some particular universities is even higher. So what I see is that it might stay there for 2-3 years at least before it go back to normal pace. Because if you look at the last 3 to 5 years, Pakistan used to be a 12 to 15,000 numbers market for UK. It has now gone to 45,000. So we have already seen a huge growth in numbers from Pakistan. So that is not very organic, to be honest, growth, which has happened over the last 2-3 years. So what I feel is that it will go back to normal somewhere, maybe 25 to 30,000 students a year. You know what I mean? So because that's the genuine size and scale of Pakistani market for UK, I feel. So if you're a genuine student, again, I think if you take right steps with right measures, then I think you will still be able to come to UK. but you need to be extra careful and just keep an eye on updates. And when you apply, make sure that you get some professional advice from the university and from partner agents who are more credible. But I feel it will stay there for at least 2-3 years.
So you think that it's going to, it's really just the measures themselves are just targeted to sort of, weed out those that are not really, there for education and of course, considerations like asylum, and there are a host of other issues like you mentioned also. And these restrictions are primarily just to sort of deal with that issue.
Spot on. I think that is the whole point. I mean, as I said in the beginning, we are always welcoming to genuine international students, but unfortunately, some erroneous practices been happening over the last 2-3 years, and like 12,000 students out of 45,000, they have claimed asylum. So that's a big proportion. Nobody will ever accept it. So Pakistan has the largest proportion on asylum applications. So we all need, as a stakeholder, to make sure that genuine people are encouraged to come to UK. UK is still open for them. And if they come, they get quality education. They have all the opportunities to fulfill their dreams. But I think the difficulty is between the genuine people and the people who are not necessarily genuine. And they're using student visa as a gateway to come to UK and to settle here. I think that is the difference we need to understand and infuse within the whole strategy on both sides. And we are doing our part. I think we expect from Pakistani government also, from Pakistani respective institutions to play the part also. So I think we also need to work more closely with Higher Education Commission, with British Council Pakistan and Ministry of Education in Pakistan to make sure that we help Pakistani students to streamline a process where Pakistani government can also play a positive role. They are still doing it, but I think on a better scale, what I mean to say is that we can better support students who genuinely want to come to UK. So yes, I would say I agree with you. That is the reason behind this whole change.
Thank you so much, Mr. Minhas. Thank you for updating us and explaining to us what's happening, really. Thank you for your very valuable input. As far as the visa situation with regard to students is concerned, like Mr. Minhas said, it is perhaps time to be more strict and vigilant with regard to the criteria and perhaps do more research for those that are applying. Those seem to be the more valid things to watch out for those that are going to be applying in the next 2 to 3 years while this may continue. On that note, thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.